Hello and welcome to this video, which I wasn't actually originally intending to do, but as you may have seen in the last video, I scratch built a bridge to take the track over the Brandywine River just below the viaduct. And I had another gap that needs filling, and I've been saying about this being a civil engineering project, and it very much is a civil engineering project, because where the rail and track comes back round to the front of the L-shaped leg, the track then goes back over the Brandywine River just by the port area and swings back onto the to run alongside the dock. And that also needed fording in some way, and I was probably going to try and have a go at a little Pico side plate bridge. But I thought to myself, no, what you need there is a curved viaduct in the way you do. And of course nobody sells a curved viaduct. And that's when, as a modeller, you come up against realising you're going to have to build it yourself. So what this video is about is how I went about building a curved viaduct. And some of the things that I had to re-engage with, including O-level geometry, which was quite entertaining. What I'm proposing to do is I'll zoom in a bit more on what's on the table shortly, and from that take you through the bits that are on the table there, which I think are all the bits I'll need to build my curved viaduct. And then I'm going to build it, and you're going to see what the outcome looks like at the end. So this is something of an experimental video. I stress, as I think Graham Forston did on Lakeside, that he doesn't do how-to videos, and neither is this a how-to video, but this is a video about how I went about it, from which you are welcome to take or leave as much as you want. So I'll see you again in a moment or two once I've focused in a bit more on what's on the table. Hello and welcome back. I thought from the bit that I've just done, just to give you a clearer idea of what it is we're dealing with here. This is the track plan, as you can see, and I've built the bridge that goes across there, which is nice and straightforward, and then when it emerges from the tunnel, it then swings round across here. Now, what my original idea had been would be to have hard landscape it up to about there and probably down to there and have a little short bridge going across there. But that seems sort of pretty boring. And what I would actually quite like is a nice swinging bridge, not quite like the Royal Berwickshire Bridge, but a Royal Berwick Bridge that takes you from Berwick upon Tweed across into Scotland. But something along that sort of idea. And so I thought, I know, now that I can build bridges, I will happily go away and build a viaduct, which takes the line pretty much from about here and swings it right the way around to here. And this is one of the raised pieces on board. In fact, it's the piece that I showed you, which I'd already cut the holes out on. So I need to stick a viaduct in there. And you think, oh, well, that would be fairly straightforward, but there's actually a little bit more to it than you would otherwise think. So from the full-size map, what I had to start with was a cut of what I want the viaduct to be, and this allowed me, by using it really as a template, to begin to understand what the radius was of these two sections of track. And they turn out that the radius of one of them is 8 1/4 inches on the inside. That's obviously to the centre of the track, to the inside curve of the track. And on the outside, it's just a little over 1.5 inches, but of course I'm building a viaduct which needs a bit more space. So the inside was 8 1/4 inches, and the outside I initially went for just 2 inches wide on the bridge. And from that I was able to start constructing this first model, which is sort of paper and very light card. it was very interesting because the first thing that you then encounter is, well, okay, I know what the radius is of a whole circle, but how do I know what the length is of the individual pieces that I've got to cut out? Because plainly the distance on the outside of a curve is bigger than the distance inside. And by the help of Google and a very good site that specialises in geometry and particular circles, and also dragging out, how do you calculate the circumference of a circle? I found the formula needed to be able to calculate the length of an arc. This obviously from here to here is an arc of a circle. And what is the length of the arc inside and what is the length of the arc outside? Because of course at some point the tunnels have to match up that are going underneath the bridge. My first attempt at making it really was trying out ideas. It is very gimcrack, and I tried to cut the portal on this side, just did this as a plain piece, and thought, well, I know, I'll put the portals in on this side. This was using a scale scenes kit, but it didn't quite really work as I wanted. And trying to cut it once you've stuck this on a curve is damn near impossible. Because it's on a curve, it wants to keep rolling all over the place. But at least it gave me an idea of that I could calculate the inside and outsides of the circle, and I will put the formulae for all these things if you really want them in the video, because that was probably one of the hardest things to do as I was working it through. And very simply, I mean, once you understand how the thing works, if you know what the radius of a circle is, you can calculate its circumference by the time-honoured formulae of 2 times pi times the radius. Pi being a fixed figure of very roughly 3.14. It's a bit more complicated than that, but very roughly. So 2 times 3.14 times the radius of your circle, which in my case is 8.25 inches, and that tells you what the distance is all the way around the circle. Here we have a fraction of the circle, and that fraction is a fraction of 360 degrees. Initially, on this model, it was running at 83 degrees from that point to that point. So 83 over 360 is the fraction of the full circumference, and so the formula essentially is 2 times pi times r times x, which is the angle, over 360. Liking to keep things simple, I thought, no, what I would do is I'll extend the bridge a little bit so it runs through a full 90 degrees. And then you're just multiplying it by a quarter, because that's 90 over 360 degrees, which equals a quarter. So 2 times pi times r times a quarter. Doing that and also extending the width of the bridge, and you can see where I've done it here. That's the first model. I then developed the second model, and because I've been able to calculate the lengths of the inner and outer arcs more accurately, I could begin to work out where the cuts needed to be, not so much for the inside, that's easy, because if you just go to, these are the 2 pieces that are the lengths of the arc. So that's the inner arc when laid flat, and that's the outer arc laid flat. The inner arc is 13 inches, and the outer arc is 16 9/10, I think, of an inch. And it's very easy on this one. You just say, okay, well, I want my first portal to be there, which is, I can't remember quite what the distance is from the inside, and then between each portal there's ½ inch, and the portals themselves are, I can't quite remember now, about 2 inches, I think, something like that. So that's the easy one to mark up. But then what you've got to do is obviously know that this one is bending out here, while, let's understand, is it? That's bending out here, while this one is bending on a tighter arc, but you've got to get them all to line up. And the solution to that really is to do a scale map, which is what you can see here. I think if you can just see it coming into view, something like that. There you go. This was also useful for cutting the deck itself, but this has a common point down here of 90 degrees, down here of 90 degrees, which runs it up through a 90-degree arc to there. There's a slight extra section because this will overlap onto the board so that the track runs smoothly over it. and then you mark in your first section there on the inside with the ½ inch gap between each portal, and I then just put the lines in as a straight 90° for this is the tunnel that will go underneath, and that gave me the points on the outer side where the tunnel would emerge. So I could then use, that's where you need 3 hands, I'll put this down on the table. I could then just use this as a model to bend this round, holding it very carefully in place. And that allowed me to make the marks that you can see on here, I hope. Have a look, there you go. The little red marks that are on here for where the arches were. And the hazed area is the areas in between the arches. So from that, when you build your, that told me where everything needed to be. Now, one thing is, of course, is that the card is bending on the inside and bending on the outside. So it will mean that your tunnel portals on the inside are slightly narrower and on the outside slightly further apart. But it's so little that it doesn't cause a problem when you actually cut the card and the pieces out. So applying that technique and making only half the bridge this time came the second model, which is, I think, as you can see, is firmer in many ways. And to my great pleasure, having cut out these flat, having fitted the first one, when I fitted the second one, the tunnels went straight through. As you can see, they absolutely lined up perfectly, which was very pleasing, because that was giving me some difficulty working out how I would make it all line up. But that, essentially, by making a template on the flat and then applying it here, that sort of worked through. And it also allowed me to try a different approach for the tunnel, the roofs of the arches, not tunnels. Initially, I used the same technique as I used on the bridge, of just essentially making, I don't know if you can see here, these were just pieces of card with little flaps on the side that went in, and it forms a wall. But it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right underneath here where you would have a proper arch. The scale scenes kit from which I got the original, from which I got these portals, is for making a viaduct, but it's a straight viaduct. And it has a way of putting curved arches in, which I've sort of used. The only problem was that the scale scenes kit didn't look right for the model. It's the wrong colour brick. So the only answer, as far as I could see, was really to cut everything I needed for myself that would be in a consistent pattern. And so the Metcalf M1 Stone MN901 is the packet number, if that's what you need, was the stuff that really works, because it's a much bigger cut of stone. Let's see if I can bring it in. It's very odd having to work everything back to front. Is it gonna? There we go. A nice big stone, the kind of thing you would expect of a viaduct, as opposed to the bridge, which I used their paper that's the same as they use on their houses, so it's a smaller brick. So what you see on the table here is what I believe to be, let me move these out of the way because they're just the models, what I need to construct the bridge, the viaduct. So what we have, that's the deck, that's cut out accurately, and the 90-degree angle runs from a pencil line here to the first of these two lines here. So that will be the deck on which the track will sit. Obviously that's the outer, these are in two sections. They're in two sections because I think, apart from anything else, that would be much easier to fit than to try and operate with one long piece. One thing I discovered when I was making this model, which was, and these are held on much like the platform, Metcalf platforms with little tabs inside, trying to get that to bend round as one single piece is really quite challenging. And I think it would be much easier, as I found with this, to fit it in two halves, and there'll be a join down the centre there which will be overlain by a buttress, so you won't actually see that join. So that's the outer two sections, and then what we've got here is the inner two sections. These will form the arch, because when you do that you get an arch, and that will go in. These sections here will form the buttresses. I'll bring it into the camera. Good. Because that's, again, a simple idea borrowed from other Metcalfe designs. That essentially, this is card rather than paper. But once you wrap the buttress round, you have a little buttress, which when that sticks on will look, I think, quite good. We'll find out, because of course I haven't made it yet, so this is still something of hope over experience. I'm going to need to strengthen each side of the tunnel portals, and that's what these cards are for, because these will sit eventually, once this is on, these will sit just inside the portal and provide something for the arches to sit against, and hopefully will help form the shape. Not sure about that yet, because I may have to do something else to help get the shape just as I want, and we'll find. I'll tell you that when we get on with the design. But it's also about just making use of other things from Metcalfe kits, which work perfectly well. These things, if you've ever built one of their, I don't think that showed very well. One of their station platforms. This is already scored to be able to bend the sections round, see, like that, and you just cut two off, and that will help me fix the sides to the main track, I hope. So what I'm going to do now is start building it, and I'll come back at various stages, because I'm not going to make you sit through the pain of watching me do the whole thing, because this could take several hours, which even speeded up would be very boring. But that's what I'm planning to do, and I'll see you again in an hour or two. Well, welcome back. It's now the following day. It took me about 3 or 4 hours to actually do this, perhaps a little bit longer. And by the time I finished, it was time to go out to see the Edinburgh Military Tattoo, so that took precedence over doing the second part of the video. I'm really quite pleased with this. This has come out quite well. If I try and keep it in the camera. This is the third time I've had a go at trying to do this, and each time I pick it up and you can't see it. It looks quite good, I think, on the whole. It's not absolutely perfect. It's fine from this side, and the arches underneath look pretty fine. And you can get an idea of the construction, if I get them to turn this the right way. There we go. That essentially you have two pieces of square card which are providing the walls, and then inside there's paper that provides the arches. It's not absolutely perfect, as I say. If I turn it around the other way, which is going to be the back so nobody will see it, some of these arches, because it's a wider gap at this on the outside than it is on the inner, the paper really needed to be curved as a section of a cone, and I couldn't for the life of me work out how to do that just yet. But that is only paper inserted there, so I could easily, if I ever work out what it is, which I might try and have a go at doing, just essentially cut those out and recut the arches parts. But that's as for a second scratch build thing, I'm quite pleased with that. That looks quite good. I'll just shut down and then show you where it sits on the model, on the layout. But that is the last major gap now forded. But building this has given me an idea for the raised section of the layout and how I was going to get underneath that if any train derailed. But I'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, and now you can see where the model is on the layout. Interestingly, as you can see, let's just move this down a bit, you can see where the dock area is going to be. Having the 4-arch viaduct is making me think about how I'm going to landscape that area to allow the river probably to come through the centre two arches, so it's going to be quite wide coming into the port area, which is where it might be. Not sure how navigable I'm going to make the Brandywine much above this point, but we'll see. So that's really it for this video. It's just really to show you the making of this viaduct, and really to encourage anybody that's never built anything before to have a go. I've learnt a lot by building the Metcalfe kits, how you can use cards to make really quite strong, robust things. And although this did involve me in quite a bit of geometry, just to be able to learn how to do the inner and outer arcs properly, much of what I've done is to use the techniques and structural techniques that you'll see by building Metcalfe kits. So well done, Metcalfe, shout out to them. And their Metcalfe papers, that looks absolutely superb. That really works well, so I'm pleased with that. Okay, well that's just the end for this video. As I said last time round, an update probably in about 2 or 3 weeks time, because I can now, I think, now that I've forwarded that last point, I can lay the track all the way around and maybe get some power into it. Okay, speak to you again, and thanks for watching.